Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down the mini Splitty V2 by CivicDude. So, what does that mean? Well, this is a dueling hopper splitter. Dueling hopper referring to the mechanism right here where there's two hoppers and they duel this singular item to basically filter out one specific item. And then hopper split, or what the splitter means is basically if you have a box like this, I'm going to take this, a box like this, what this splitter will do is basically it's going to take, let me go like this, it'll take this, and I'll take all the redstone, put it in this box, take all the next items in it, and this goes in order of how the items appear. So it'll be observers, then redstone repeaters, then comparators, and so on and so forth. All the way, you pretty much get the idea here. Oop. Here, and then here, and this is kind of repetitive, but I'm just gonna do the last one right here, and then basically it yeets out all of these boxes to you. Now, why would you want it sorted like this? Well, a lot of systems actually use this type of, or those type of boxes to sort, because like that bulk right there that has a bulk sorter, a box sorter right there that uses like full boxes, but like the same kind of logic applies. You could sort the entire box and then unload it, and that just makes it way more efficient instead of having to spit out every item and filter them and put them back into boxes. You could put this and sort it and then put it into a box merger, for example, or any number of things. Now, this system is kind of weird, at least with the startup, because of its very compact nature, but I'm just gonna come over the main thing right here. This is where you put your items in, and it has quite a bit of a buffer. Now, it has to be manually started. This is normally done with this button right here, and once you start it and it starts filtering items, it will keep itself alive. Now, for testing purposes, I've put a lever here to turn on and permanently stick on every clock. That way I can explain it with the clocks running and it makes a lot of sense. But what you have to understand is when you power this, it will trigger all the signals, and it will power this line and power this pulse extender right here to keep the system on for as long as the time, so that things can start running, and that way if a new signal comes in, it will keep it on even longer. So that way another signal can come if there is more signals coming, which doesn't make a lot of sense if you explain it like that, but it'll make more sense when we go through the system. But basically, all the red lines have to do with hopper locking. So as you can see, this line right here powers this line right here, and power goes up to this block, which then powers this hopper right here and this hopper right here. Then this line is also powering this piston through the shulker box, extending this redstone block, which powers this hopper right here, which is for your extra shulker boxes, as well as going down this line and powering, where is this line coming from? No, it's actually powering this hopper right here, as well as powering all of this line, which locks this hopper right here. And this line right here gets its power from this redstone torch, which comes from this redstone torch here, so at the end, so it loops back. Now there's also a second signal which comes to here, which basically keeps this signal out, or this observer out. And yeah, so when we unlock it, all of this will turn off and all of these hoppers will be able to move, and you'll see there's a clock or a bunch of redstone signals happening here. Well, this is because when this redstone sticky piston moves forward, it actually creates a clock, because what happens is this observer gets updated because it got moved, so it will power this block, which will then power this note block. And then what happens then is it powers this observer, which goes into this comparator right here, which is taking a signal, but because it's in compare mode and this cauldron isn't fully full, what happens is this observer will power it and then turn off any output signal, which will cause this redstone repeater to turn, or to get locked and off and on again, but that's not too important, which then powers this observer right here, which causes this loop in itself. This is a loop. Now we do take a signal off of that, and it goes to this observer right here. If I can find a good angle, here we go. This observer right here, which is going to this line right here, which is powering this block right here, powering this note block, which is really buggy with the perspective, but goes to this note block, powering this observer right here, which does the same thing we saw over there with the comparator trick. So it's basically turning on and off this signal right here, and you can see the intervals which go to each of these jukeboxes actually, which is quite expensive, but basically it'll go to all the hoppers, and we'll talk about all that in a second when we break down the individual modules. And this signal also, I believe, also goes in a different direction. Yeah, it also powers this line right here, which is for pushing the shulker boxes back up into the system to fire them when they're needed. Now, so basically this system has 4 modules. Now, the thing about it is that it can be really easily be expanded to fit as many, and that basically increases the input rate into your system. So if you just have a regular hopper, as in like the most basic kind of storage, the things you see on like regular like YouTuber hardcore worlds, I guess you could say, is those just have a simple input rate of 1 times hopper speed, because they have 1 input and that one hopper is taking everything and putting it into the system. Now, this system right here becomes 4 times hopper speed. Now, it is a little bit variable. Ignore that. That's from me fixing something in the system. But this basically is 4 times hopper speed, because it goes through shulker boxes at 4 times at its max capacity if you fill up all of the slots. And it may vary a little bit because it technically will shoot out all the box at once and then you have to sort through that. But essentially it's going through and pre-sorting everything at 4 times hopper speed. Now you can expand this. This is a really simple module to expand. And you just take this 2Y tileable slice and stick it onto the end, obviously moving this side to there. So let's get into it, I guess. So we have the main input right here, and it'll go down this hopper line and go down into this dropper right here. This dropper will power this redstone comparator, which will power this block right here, moving it down. Now, this right here is kind of the control panel, I guess, or not really the control panel, but this is like the brain of the system. You have a bunch of, I guess you could say, if statements, or I think it's a better way to think about it is or statements. So if this is going or this, it will cause this system to run by powering this redstone torch right here. Now, how the first OR statement works is if boxes are in the queue, which is from this right here, and boxes are running. Now what happens is when this moves down, it will allow this comparator to take a readout from this cauldron right here, which causes this signal to get cancelled out and go to 0, because this is in subtract mode, so it goes to 0, and then it turns off all of the following ones and triggers. And that's basically how all of these OR gates work. They basically use a comparator subtract mode, and they all use the same cauldron with the same fill level to cancel out this shulker box right here. Does this have to be a shulker box? Not necessarily. It can be any like container that can have a fill level that's this precise, while also being able to get power through with this redstone dust. So shulker box is just convenient. So what will happen is this redstone right here will power, and this will actually cause an update to this line right here. I'm not exactly sure why, but it does update these rails, which causes an update to this observer right here. By powering this observer, there is also a secondary output to push this piston, which will extend this piston, which will also turn off this signal, which is not too important, but basically it's just to check if a box has gone into the slice. This is more for user feedback, I guess. You could maybe take a redstone output from, or like a redstone lamp output and display it. That might be cool, but it's not too important. Now what also happens is it also powers this note block, which goes up this huge chain, or not huge, but chain up to here, which powers this block right here. By powering this block, it will power this redstone rail right here, which powers this observer, powering this block right here. Now, a lot of stuff will happen right here. One thing being is it will power this line right here, causing this comparator to power, unpowering this redstone torch and powering this, which causes an input into the system to extend the redstone or the pulse extender. Now this obviously won't happen because we have the lever triggering on, but if you just pulse it, then once an item makes its way into the system, it will keep itself on, which is key because you want to actually sort items. Now what will also happen is it will power this line right here. Now this will use a very cool trick, in my opinion. I think it's one of the coolest tricks in technical Minecraft to get an update across a lot of signals. Is basically this comparator right here is taking an output from this cake, and it's obviously giving a signal strength of 14. Now what is happening is this basically goes to 14, and when this powers it, it actually powers this block or this redstone wire with a signal strength of 15, and that updates all of these, which cause all of these observers to powering their respective droppers. And so what that does is it basically takes the item that's in this dropper right here, powers it, pushes it into the next dropper, powers it, and pushes it into the next dropper. This time it doesn't power because there's glass blocking the direct line of powering, so it gets stuck in this dropper because this slice is open. This is the slice open checker. So if there's nothing being filtered, there will be glass here, which stops any further power and allows it to be filtered. What happens is, if there's a slice here, this glass will move and it will allow the system to power and move the item onto the next available slice. What happens in this case is, because we haven't properly set it, or this is one way of setting up, but it hasn't properly set up, what'll happen is it'll just shoot out the end. But you can have a system where it recycles the box, pushes it back into this chest right here, or maybe even further down all the way here, so it doesn't have to deal with queuing in line. Now, what also happens is it takes a observer output from this observer right here, and it goes down this line right here and goes all the way here and powers this redstone repeater right here, which powers this line right here, goes down to this and pushes this block back here. So it moves this piston from coming up, which pushed the block right here, stopping the signal from coming as going back to pushing it down. Now, this basically causes this line to power because this comparator right here is in compare mode. So because this will go, this signal right here will stop going in while this block is up. It will turn this signal off because the signal from the back is less than the signal from the left or the right. And so it'll power this and keep the system on. So now that it's made its way into the system and it's been confirmed, it can power off the system if required. Because all of this stuff right here is slice independent, apart from this clock right here. So getting back to it is once it makes its way into the slice. So now that it's in here, or this dropper right here, there's not a really good angle, but basically this dropper right here, on the other side of this glass, it will get sucked down into this hopper right here. When it's in this hopper, it will power this comparator, which will power this observer, shoving this entire line to the side. Now, this does quite a few things actually, which first of all, what it will do is it will make the slide open, so it will remove this glass so the signal from the observer can power and it can continue down the line for any other boxes coming. The next thing it will do is it will move this cauldron here, which will give a different output than the cauldron right here. So it will power this line and power this line right here and cause this line to be stuck like this. This is, I'm not too sure why this is too important, but it is there. Now, the last thing it does is it moves this cherry log, or any log you can do. This isn't really exclusive to cherry logs. It will move it to this block right here, which will cause an observer update, because when logs get, when a leaf detects the position, for the furthest position from a log changes, then it will update this observer. Now, it doesn't have any direct power underneath it. Or it actually does, but it just powers this dropper, which isn't too important. But what it does power is it powers this observer and powers this dispenser right here. Why that's important is because by the time that this hopper right here, or the item has made its way into this hopper and this entire cycle has run, this hopper, or the item in the hopper, or the shulker box in the hopper, will be moved to this dispenser, which will then power and shoot the choker box right here. Now you may say, well, there is no space for it to go. Well, because this piston's head here, and this piston head is because of this redstone wire right here, and this is getting powered because of this signal over here. So what we need to do, or what basically happens, is actually there is a use to this. When this cauldron gets moved over here, it will cause, or it's an invisible block, so it will stop any signal from going, and it will move to this redstone wire right here and turn it off, because there's no signal crossing through. The reason we use a cauldron is so that any further slices down the line can power. For example, if this slice, it can cauldron moves, it's the same fill level as this, so it keeps the other slices pistons still powered backwards by this redstone line still being on. So now we have a block, or a shulker box placed right here, and we go to the hopper right here. Now you may say this looks very funky because we have a water bottle right here and a hopper right here, or no, a bunch of, or water bucket and a couple water bottles, and a hopper with a bunch of other water bottles. Now, this is the dueling hopper mechanism. This is what I think is probably one of the coolest storage tech things that we do, or techniques or mechanisms, I guess you could say this. I don't know exactly how to say it, but basically it is shoving this water bucket back and forth between these hoppers, and it's constantly getting locked and unlocked. If you can see on the top left of my screen, you can see the enabled going from false to true to false to true. This is coming from this line right here, which is coming from the clock we talked about earlier on. Basically, what's happening here is it's getting pushed, this water bucket is getting pushed into this line right here and pushed back and then locked. So what happens is when it gets pushed over here and has a chance before it gets pushed into it again, that's a chance for an item in the shulker box right here to get pulled out. So what will happen is, but because this is constantly open, it will immediately push it back if there's no item to fill its spot. So what will happen is actually this hopper right here will get powered, or no, so when this happens, when the shulker box gets placed, the water bucket will move to this hopper right here, and an item will immediately get sucked because it is on it has cooldown, or it doesn't have the cooldown, and an item will fill the spot, so the water bucket stays here. This is where this comparator comes in. This comparator right here will then read as full because this hopper right here is full of unstackables, so it gives the full signal strength, which is different to this hopper right here. Or sorry, not different, it's the same as the signal right here, and this compares in subtract mode. So a signal strength of 15 and minus a signal strength of 15 goes to 0. So this causes this line right here to unpower, which will cause this redstone wire to unpower, unlocking this bottom hopper, which allows redstone signals from this to, not redstone signals, items to travel down this line right here. Now, yeah, and that will start filtering all the way down and go into this shulker box right here. Now, when it moves down, it will also power this comparator right here, which will power this redstone torch. The reason nothing too important right here happens is because when it powers, this comparator powers this block, it also simultaneously powers these activator rails as well as this redstone torch, or while turning this redstone torch off. So this doesn't have an instant where the rails turn off. And this keeps the piston extended and basically all of the updates in check. Now, what happens is basically all the items will start to get filtered out into this shulker box right here, and all is well and good. Now, so that is, in this case, this happening right here, and it's all the items going into here. Now, the difference is what happens when when there's no more redstone to be pushed back. Well, the timings on this clock right here are very specific for a reason. What happens is when it runs out of items, this hopper will lock at the specific time long enough for the water bottle to get pushed back and stay there long enough for this comparator to take an output, or to take a no longer full output, which will turn on this whole system, locking this bottom hopper and causing this line to eventually go to empty. When this goes to empty, there's a small interval between this turning off and this redstone torch turning off that leaves a moment for this activator rail here to unpower. This will send a signal to this observer, which will go up this line and power this block right here, breaking the box and shoving it into this water stream, which eventually becomes your output through a little bit of zigzagging. And that will be filled with all of your redstone right here. And yeah, there will also be an output going to this observer right here, which goes down all of this line right here, which powers this block. But because this redstone torch will be turned off for just a second, it will move up and then this line will fire, so no update will happen here. And basically, then this cycle repeats for all of the other items in this box until there's nothing left in the box, until you have an empty box, or you could say with one item left if you want. What happens in this final item is that, or basically the whole cycle repeats for all the other items, with a item being forced into this hopper, then this comparator taking output, this cycle running and breaking all the other boxes. What happens with this last item is it will pause and turn off the whole system. Or no, it will no longer take any outputs from up here, and this remains locked. So what will happen is this comparator will do the same thing and unpower this power activator rail line here, and it will power and do the same thing with breaking the box, And also just one thing to note is that how this box gets replaced is through this same, not this timer, from this redstone line right here with the observers constantly powering, which will power this dropper to push a shulker box back into this dispenser, which push and get powered, as you can see on the top left, to shoot out a shulker box at every single opportunity. Now what will happen is when the shulker box gets broken, the whole thing moves up, and this piston moves back up and moves back down, and this line up here from before fires, causing this piston to extend and move back. This causes a white stained glass update because it'll detect, hey, there's something next to me, I'm gonna connect to that, and then this will cause this observer to detect that update, which will power this observer, powering this iron trapdoor, which will flick and then go back, which will power this observer, powering this block, which will power this note block right here, which also powers all the other lines to check if there is still, or to double check to reset if they can. And then what happens is it continues up and powers this piston, shoving the entire line back, saying, hey, I'm now open, I can take another box. Okay, so now to test the system, I made the box a little bit nicer, as you can see right here. It has just 2 items, just so we can quickly get through all the cycles. Now what happens is I'm going to put this box into here, and then I'm going to run the system, and you'll see this will turn off and run the system, it'll move, and the box gets placed like so. Now what'll be interesting to see is the back right here, where this moves back and it doesn't fire, and then the box gets shut out, and then the second box gets placed, and now here you get to see the second update in just a second. There we go, it fires, resetting the slice, whole system coming here, and you got this right here, and you can see you got your 2 separated. So basically it will also output this box right here, and that's because of the box right here. So when it gets broken, it gets put in this water stream right here, and it goes down because this water stream right here isn't used because that's for a different system. Now there is a version, or you can literally just block this line up right here, and this will be the line right here you can use to get, if you want, different outputs. Now one last thing to note is this is a light right here, which is a light, but you can also use it as an output, and what will happen is this is to check to tell you when it has no more boxes, and this comes from this line right here, which comes from this redstone dust, coming from this comparator, which takes a readout on this box here. So when this box goes to 0, it will turn off. Now if you have a system where you have a global shulker line, and then you can like run the output of this line into your main shulker box storage, which goes into this global, you shouldn't run out. But if you're running this independently, be wary, this system does eat through shulker boxes very, very quickly. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole system like that. It runs really elegantly, in my opinion, especially with the logic of this system right here. And it's really easily expandable, and overall, a really great system. So yeah, thank you for watching.